Okay, I think we're live. This episode, the 2025 Data Crystal Ball. We try to get it done just before Christmas, but yeah, my schedule prevented that. So, without further ado, let's bring back Ben Rogojan. Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, Chris?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for coming on to use our data crystal ball to do some more predictions. And again, I think we did the same thing to predict 2024. So we can see how we did on that and what's new on the horizon. So I obviously know you very well, Ben, and probably a lot of the audience do. But in case they don't, do you want to give yourself a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you again. So, hey everyone, my name is Ben Rogojan. Some people know me as Seattle Data Guy, now in Denver. But most of what I focus on is helping people set up their data infrastructure and strategy. And before kind of being an independent consultant and I guess a content creator, I worked at Facebook as a data engineer, and before that in healthcare pretty heavily. So now, really, you probably, if you look me up, you probably find either some article or some video with now starting more and more of this background or starring more of this background. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, well, that's probably a very humble view. You're a content machine. You've got so much content out there, and I know it's been valuable for many data engineers that have been on the journey. So well done for what you've done to the community. So we'll start with maybe a quick summary of like the items we discussed last year. We won't go too much into detail. We'll just see if there's been any movement in those areas and see if it's something that we think is going to continue in 2025. And I think the first one we discussed was the cloud vendor wars. So I think they've actually probably got a bit more fierce recently.
Yeah.
We've had the Databricks and Snowflake of really going more head to head now with even acquiring companies that they both wanted to acquire, which is Tabula, I think, which was a bit of a shock for what they paid for it. So yeah, what other do you think there's been more wars out there? Anyone else? Any other players you think are up in their game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard thing is, right, like I wrote a post about this once where I said the more data you think about it, Databricks versus Snowflake, the happier both of them are, right? Because then you don't think about anyone else. But they probably are the loudest, but it's not to say that people aren't using things like BigQuery or some other tooling to do some of their maybe more data platform and automation. And I think BigQuery still tends to be a pretty common one I see around that a lot of people use.
Do you see the Microsoft stack much over your side of the? Well, I say this side of the pond. I'm in Australia. Sorry, I'm in America now as well.
I do run into it occasionally. I definitely see it a little less frequently. I think it's definitely more of a larger enterprise thing. I have my mixed feelings about it. Every time I have to set up anything in Azure, it feels like I have to pick through 7 different options. Like I set up a serverless function and it's like, okay, which type of serverless function? I'm like, I don't know. I just want a serverless function that I can set up easily. And then you figure out, and how I set up libraries in each of these will be slightly different depending on which one I pick. And so I think there's mixed feelings there. I think I've gotten a soft spot for AWS and GCP after using Azure more and more. So
I think I see more. Don't see as much GCP in the UK. See more Azure, but I think I made a joke. Obviously, releasing Fabric and experiencing the effort required in the past to migrate from ADSL 1 to ADSL 2 and any other movements that you've had to do when they keep changing the contents of their data platform. I think if they needed if they're going to call it Fabric, I thought they're going to have a migration tool called Fabric Softener to ease the migration activities. But
we got to keep us consultants employed, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's got to keep them real, and trying to cut through all the noise that they produce. So I think we touched on that as well, which was the cloud data platform wars, which I suppose the thing that I've noticed more this year than I think we did predict this is the consolidation, and that's I think there's consolidation in 2 ways. I joked of this is like it's do you select a product or a platform based on best of breed, or are we going for the best agreed, which you just go to Microsoft and they can do it all, although it may not do the best job, but it's one contract you have, and it's been signed off at the top level, and you just have to all fall into play. So AWS haven't done that though. I mean, that's something you found that they it's very much a mix and match when you play in the AWS world. But what's your view on GCP? Is that, do you see that as if you're GCP, are you all in, or is it a mix and match with them to some degree?
Yeah, you can, right? I think GCP's done a pretty good job of having tooling that could let you be like, hey, let's set up our whole platform in GCP. I don't think they've done marketing as well, or they haven't really put out that, hey, we have tools that can do your transform. We have tools that can do all of this. I don't think they've done that as well. So I think a lot of people often, when I see they go to GCP, it's like, well, we use BigQuery and then we use all these other tools on top of it to actually run our flow. But you definitely could. I think that's something that they want to do, right? Like they're slowly trying to integrate Looker. I don't think, again, they've done the greatest job there, but we'll see. But it's an option. I'm trying to think on that. Yeah, it's interesting thing about AWS because it's another place that's like, I think because they're still stuck with Redshift, like a lot of people tend to avoid it. Maybe they either need to revitalize it, rebrand that to excite people to kind of come back to it and be like, it's not. We promise it's not the old thing you were using. I think too many people remember what it was like.
They'll have to call it, because the rumor has it was called Redshift because of the migration from Oracle across to it. But I don't know how true that is. But maybe they rebrand it Blueshift, so they should take the Snowflake load back across. But we'll see if that happens. Something the other thing we talked about was ETL, ELT, streaming, and CDC wars. One thing that we just observed earlier was the ETL market, or integration market. Rivery just got purchased, as we were talking earlier. So there's definitely some movement in that area of consolidation. But do you see any changes now where ETL will make more of a comeback, whereas you're going to have, so for example, we're going to talk about this a little later, but Iceberg as your storage, having your compute done within at the same time as your orchestration. So as you're bringing the data across and you're just landing the data into Iceberg, so it's going to be less of that push down. Do you see that happening more going forward?
I mean, I think people really like the fact, like the idea of just getting data into your data warehouse and then figuring it out later. It feels like less work. I don't like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's hard to believe it's less work. At some point, you always have the transform or somewhere you've got to do that work. That actually thinking of what you're trying to do. So unless someone can replace that for each business, because there's some level where maybe if you pull from the same data sources, you can sit some sort of transform on top of it, and avoid all of it. But even if you pull data from, let's say, HubSpot to Snowflake via their integration, it actually makes the data harder to I don't know if you've done that. It's like, oh, now our data is very heavily normalized. You have to parse out the right IDs to get each entity that you're trying to pull out. It's not as clear cut as if hey, I'm just going to pull out companies, contacts, and these things. So in a weird way, that's gotten more layers. You have to pivot it all. So even those things that should be pretty straightforward, it seems like you still have to do the transform for. So that's and then you add in the fact that people have their own custom data sources that require transforms. It's you're always going to have that, even if you do this extract load, right? It makes it easy. I think people like that. I think they'll keep doing that, but you're not saving that much time, because at some point you've got to pay that transform time.
I had Bill Inman on the show toward the end of last year, and he gave some truth bombs on his view of ETL versus ELT. His view is ELT was the minds or the brainchild of the vendors to drive all compute down to Teradata. There may be some truth in that. I think the challenge that you just highlighted there in this current world we live in is the old days of ETL tools from my day. You know, the Informaticas, the data stages, and ODIs, and others of that era. Was that tool or no tool? Everyone had to buy into that tool, so that was the tool you use across your whole enterprise. And I think that whole centralized, decentralized world we live in now, ETL requires centralization, and ELT supports a more decentralized approach. So, I think just with good documentation, make sure you got the lineage and do your transforms all in the same place. Then you shouldn't get yourself in too much of a problem. But horses for courses, I like to say. It's it's the right approach or the right requirement. Val just put a comment on here as well. Is like in-memory transforms. So like things when on the fly, especially if it's additive, you're adding additional attributes onto an entity. You might as well calculate them while it's on the fly.
Kind of reminds me of schema on read.
Well, no, because I suppose
it's different.
But it's as long as I don't. I always very much support of having a mutable, or you haven't messed around with something, so this is the raw data as it's come from. Having additional columns you add to it, then that's right. But no transforms, and not providing the original data that was used to drive the transform. So data modeling was the next thing. I know we're going through these quite quick, so I want to get onto the stuff for next year. So we're just doing a little bit of a review of the ones from last year. So the data modeling method wars. So Joe, shout out to Joe. I'm not sure if you're listening, but he's been championing his mixed model arts. Mixed. Is it called mixed martial model? Yeah. Anyway, mixed model arts. Mixed mode modeling, I think maybe it is. But someone out there, if you correct me on the chat, I'll but I think that's get back to that horses for courses approach. It's providing what's the right modeling for your requirements. So I see that there's been more of a focus on actually the need for data modeling. I haven't seen as much wars over Data Vault versus Kimball versus Inman sort of. I think they all live alongside each other to some degree. In fact, while we're talking about data modeling, I think there was a post I saw the other day where someone was talking about slowly changing dimensions and referencing Kimball. I thought, someone's read the old books. It's good.
The old books. the old text.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, the first. What's it called? The first edition or whatever. But I think it was the Data Warehouse Toolkit. I think some of that stuff's all in. But what was interesting, they were talking about, if you can always change them later to perform that, and they were talking about having a value at a point in time. And I said, well, what about slowly changing facts? So you have a fact that you actually have a day record on it, which is your reporting day. You can track your values, which is something I've done in the past and referred to. But everyone's going, "Wow!" So I'm thinking, "This is not new. I didn't make it up. This is a standard, some old 101 data modeling methodology." So, do you see more now? Do you helping clients more with their data modeling now, or are you finding there's it's not the focus for some people, or is there an increase?
I mean, there's definitely, like, everyone wants to do things the right way, but I think it's the age old problem. But I think we're a little more aware of it now. Is that people want things done too? So you're constantly trying to balance, like, hey, can we take some time and plan this? Like, and what do you want to actually report on? And what are your key kind of business entities? And trying to balance also, like, delivering and being like, okay, well, also here's what you can make from all of this data, right? And so I think that's the bigger challenge now. It's like, look, people know that they should have data models, but people also have the business to answer to. And again, we're not in a place where the business wants to wait 6 months anymore for you to kind of talk through, or 2 years, and if you're talking about larger enterprises, to like get through and build an EDW.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, a lot of the reason and rational, well, a lot of the resistance to releasing something so they thought it was fully ready was because once it was there, it was so hard to change something. So you get something there and you go, oh my God, to go make an alter to that or change the structure was just so difficult that people thought, okay, I can't release it until I know it's ready, and that prevented you actually releasing it. Do you see now? This is something we do quite a bit now. Is helping with that data ops approach to be able to support regular changes and in a controlled way. I think if that becomes more mainstream, I think that concept. Oh no, we need to finish it all. You can do it. Wide and deep over time. So as long as you have that wide view of where you're heading, and understand where you go deep at what point. But then you can make changes to something when you have gone down a particular route because you've put in the capabilities and framework, or I think my guys like to call it the scaffolding to facilitate changes. Do you see that as one of a problem out there of that data or resistance to go through a more formal data modeling approach?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that resistance towards if it's rigid, right? But I do think you're seeing a lot more people build data models in a way that tries to be, I think, a little more acceptable to change. One, you have to accept that fact. I mean, I've done projects where I've developed the entire data model, pipelines, everything, and then 2 months later, no one said anything, but now we're switching ERPs, right? Because for some reason, somewhere on the business side, they're like, we don't like our old ERP. Again, it doesn't click to them. That's that's what all of this reporting is based on. And so by switching it out, now you got to change it. And so you have to be like, okay, how do we adopt this? Can we take, can we take their new data and make it kind of fit the old ways? Are there changes? And so, you want to build systems that can adapt in those situations where it's like, okay, if we do switch, how do we reconnect things?
And I think that's something we always talk to, trying to understand the landscape of I suppose the stability of the source systems that I'll be using there, and CRMs, ERPs are just good candidates for having some level of abstraction, because mergers, change of software just happen in both those areas. Other ones, they're probably less common that you find that those ones being ripped out or having multiple ones. So I think that's where, and Veronica will probably support this, would be the data vault approach to provide that insulation from those changes, or the ability to easily add on other ones. But it's what I am glad about is, I think about 3 years ago, I think I started, one of my rants before was bring back data modeling, and I had to spell it twice because it was double L in the UK and one over here. But it's from something that was rarely talked about. It's talked about much more, but it's much more commonly discussed now, and there is more of a focus on it. So I'm sure it's just down to that hashtag. It was the only reason.
Yes.
Okay, so the last one we had from last year, before we can talk about what we see happening next year, and obviously running a consultancy company yourself, the big four consultancies versus independents war. So have you seen? Do you get to work alongside or compete with some of the bigger players in some of your clients?
Every once in a while, definitely. I think I hit more mid-sized companies, so I'll sometimes compete with some of the more mid-sized consultants. Probably not as much the McKinseys and Deloittes of the world.
Yeah.
But I am seeing plenty of people who want to go into independent consulting and who are landing clients. So to me, I don't think there's necessarily that much more consulting work. I think there's plenty more people who are interested in doing it, and there are people landing clients. I mean, if anything, I think this year, right, like McKinsey and a few of the other ones have been having a hard time, I think, getting enough business. They're either having to lay off or temporarily push start dates for a lot of their clients. But from my side, if you've been doing a good job of, I think, building up a referral network or somehow getting your brand out there, I imagine you've been doing fine as an independent consultant.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always feast and famine, but I think, there's endless work in the data world, as we kind of suggested earlier. And I'm talking to more companies that are looking for kind of like not full-time, like they don't want to hire maybe a full-time data team, but they want someone that can do all this work for like half the time or a quarter of the time. So I am seeing that as well, where especially if your company is only 200 to 1,000 people, maybe you don't want a full data team. You're just like, I just want a partial data team.
Exactly. We've got something we call a data care pack that we've got a few of our clients on it, which is sort of like a bit of a wrapper around that with a fractional engineering or architecture support and ability to call upon when needed and provide continuity to them. So I think that's working quite well. I think the cost of hiring a full-time team and having that continuity is a big overhead. So I think there's definitely a space for that. I mean, from recent experience, and we've had some good successes. Really, we've been involved in some RFPs against a number of other big consultancies, and we've come out favoured on them. So so
I'm sure your pricing is much fairer. Not to put you in any bracket, but
well, yes, but there's still someone out there that will go and say they'll go and offshore it somewhere, and
that's
just and you're going to do how much? I'd love to see how that was estimated. So you're always going to have that, and I think, and I hope that companies are learning a lesson from that, because it realistically, do you actually think you can actually get that stuff delivered offshore that quickly with the right with the right quality?
There's a lot of challenges there. There's a lot of challenges there, right? It can work, but like I've seen it go well occasionally, but I've seen it go terribly more often. So
I think where I have seen it work, and it's in larger scale transformations where there's already lots of predefined documentation or proper requirements defined, and that's as soon as you get into the stage where you've got a very ambiguous sort of requirements, it's very hard to actually get progress. So and actually manage that actual work. So it is possible, but it has a larger overhead to do that. But so I think that's wrapping up. So I think we did all right for last year. We called out a few things. But let's see how we do for the topics for this year. So obviously we'd have to start. We're going alphabetical order. No, we're not. It's the biggest one. AI. So I think I called it the AI gold rush. So what's your view of the AI world for this coming year?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're going to see, and I wrote about this as well, like is a lot of companies have obviously talked a lot, and I think there's a lot of use cases that I've seen for the last, what feels like a decade. It's kind of similar use cases where it's like customer service. I think like predictive pharmaceuticals, where it's like we'll use prior data and just stick an AI on top of it, and it'll tell us what how we can find new medications or like old medications that can use for new use cases.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that was kind of very popular also when kind of the first iterations of neural network that kind of became more accessible to people. Just that was kind of some of the initial waves. So I think we're going to start seeing use cases from a lot of these like more accessible toolings kind of diversify a bit, right? Where it's like actual use cases, not just like, hey, here's the top 10 things that if you've worked in data for a short amount of time or a long amount of time, you'd probably think of anyways. I think we're going to start seeing some things that are a little deeper. I mean, I'm talking to companies and I've invested in companies that are doing what I think are hopefully cooler things, and I think are cooler things. So, and at least more business practical. I think that's the biggest thing, is like seeing business practical applications of it. So I think that's kind of where we're going to go. We're going to see like all these companies that have maybe been a little more quiet for the last 2 years and haven't been maybe shouting, here's what we're doing. It's like that maybe in 2026, 2027, we'll like start seeing like, okay, we've been putting a lot of effort into how we deploy the models, how we like actually test it, how we ensure that it's good. And and then actually seeing all that work pay off in the next few years, because that's what it's going to take. Because I'm still seeing companies that struggle with deploying basic ML models because they don't have the infrastructure there to make it easy. So every time a new person gets hired, they're like, how do I deploy an ML model? And they have to make their own way to do it. And so now they're spending just a year just to figure out how to deploy it correctly. So you have to build that infrastructure around it to make that easy.
Yeah, that's a good sort of test, isn't it? Really, like how prepared are you for AI? You know, and if you ask yourself, you're internally to your business, how quickly does it take me to get a data model change? You know, how quickly does it take me to get a new report out there? How quickly does it take me to get a new environment set up? And that's with your current infrastructure. And unless you get some some comments where it's in a 2-day turnaround. Yeah, it's self-serve. Yeah, I wouldn't even bother trying to even start on that AI journey, because maybe some individual use cases, but do it in a way that is isolated while you get prepared for mainstream enterprise use of it. Just get all your foundations sorted. Have some good data ops, or just ops. DevOps, data ops, AI ops. Where having that ability to deploy regularly, confidently, with quality is a thing I think we're focused on. But I'm sure loads of people won't do that, and they'll go straight in probably create a bit of a mess. There's a big focus on the power consumption, of how much this will actually really cost. And OpenAI, I think they're making money on their premium version, so they're definitely not making money on the free version. How much money do you think they've got, or how much power we got in the world left to actually power these things till like all the lights start dimming? I think if we're going to say what it's going to be big, I think it's going to be big in building power plants. That's going to be the thing of 2025 and 2026.
That's a funny thought. Yeah. Someone should start investing in whatever. I mean, like, it depends on whatever they use for energy, right? Nuclear, however they plan to go. That's an interesting, like, long-term play, right? Like thinking a few layers deeper. I think I recall. I don't remember which there was like what like investing firm was talking about that, how they were like, we were already looking at it back in when AI became big. We knew that they would use a lot of energy, so we went like 3 layers deeper, and we invested in like a few things like uranium and a few other spaces. So that was kind of
we should go build a dam somewhere, get some hydroelectric, and put a data center right next to it. I'm sure Bill Gates and Bezos are already planning this stuff, and they're already one step ahead. But it is quite concerning that we were talking earlier about vendors putting their prices up in the modern data stack world, and we were saying, well, you were mentioning that they're running out of runway. It's got to be cost effective. It's probably because they're spending all their money on large enterprise conferences and not spending a bargain one with us on the data conference, indie conference. I'll do another plug for the Indie Data Conference, Window Data Conference a little later. But it's that it has to earn its keep now. This software needs to pay what it's costing to supply. The loss leaders are going. How much time we got in this AI space? It's quite interesting. All these companies that maybe building a heavy dependency, on this AI, not actually understanding, the power consumption it's getting, and knowing they're getting it subsidized at the moment, or anyone building products on top of this stuff and then selling their prices up now. As soon as these AI companies start charging appropriately for their LLMs, the price is going to be the consumer in the end of the day, isn't it? We're all going to end up paying for it all. So Ramona's just telling us that BG did invest a lot of nuclear energy research. I don't know who BG is. I don't know.
BG. Black, no. I'm like, black gold, no.
Ramon, if you tell us BG is, we're not too sure. And I suppose the other thing I've seen recently is Nvidia now are creating their own PCs now, or machines, which are quite fast as well. So will we see the well, yeah, mind you, I wonder how much power they're using though. So you have to have your own like generator put onto it just to run your PC.
Oh, Bill Gates.
Bill Gates.
Okay.
Yeah. He definitely is anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we think that maybe this is a prediction out there. So there may be the rise of people buying their own NVIDIA desktops, or having a little farm in their offices now that's doing this stuff, and to insulate the potential increase in costs that they'll have to do for using anything, any SaaS option out there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's a thought. I don't know what the consumption is. I have to look at it. I'd hope it's not. I hope they're not selling something that's going to immediately increase consumption. Like they sell 1 million computers and suddenly we're draining the power supply we do have. It makes me think. I remember seeing. I think Alex Freeberg, if you know, also knows Alex the analyst. I think he posted something once somewhere where it's like in 5 years, like companies are going to realize that like AI is so like expensive and consume so much power that they're going to want to go back to human brains instead. Like, oh, this is too expensive. Let's go back to human brains. They require only like whatever 2,000 calories a day, way less energy to do this kind of work.
But especially the AI starts hallucinating and arguing with you more, you think actually the humans are more in control. We can just not feed them and they shut up. Whereas it's like the AI keep getting power.
Yeah.
So I mean, touching on that as well. So, and I see a lot of articles on this stuff. Is obviously LLMs have been the big thing, and small language models are more commonly talked about, for very much specialized, to train maybe on the large language, but then specialized and tuned for a certain purpose. Mentioning that NVIDIA doing their own PCs now is maybe it's the TLMs, the tiny language models, where you just prime it with exactly what you want for it to work on, and you're working on just a highly tuned, gone through the layers. A highly tuned LLM has been highly tuned as a small language model. It's now being highly tuned for your own independent or unique use cases that you may have as an organization or an individual. So yeah, that's one thing I think. Well, I don't know if TLM's already been coined out there, but but at least it's not used for anything else so far. Anyway, not like other ones that could have been selected. So yeah, anything else you're seeing in that AI world, do you think?
I mean, I think we're still early days, right? That's only like 2 years. I think again, like I said, there's a lot of still frustrations and issues with using a lot of these, and it's always hard, right? Because you say AI, but I think these days people say AI, they really mean a very narrow slice of what that even means. So like a lot of people refer to LLM. So I think there's a lot of problems with and issues that people run into when they're kind of using some of these tools. And some people are going to say like, okay, these are not good, and so we shouldn't use them. And I imagine that again, there's a group of people who are like, these are not good. I'm going to figure out how they work and how to make them better. And that's what's going to happen is like, again, over the years, things will slightly change and just get that much better. I remember, I still don't remember what book I read it in, but it was like talking about how like the combustion engine was kind of slowly built for a car. And it was always just like every 5 years, someone else fixed some tiny problem that it had until it kind of came out into something that was more usable. So it's what's going to probably happen here is like every year or two, we're going to fix some problem in it. Someone's going to be willing to tinker with it. And that will get us to a point where we'll actually have something in the next 10 years that's like, okay, we can use this in a way we like.
It's and it links on to something else I was going to talk about, and we named it earlier, was that as with anything, in the data world, we keep going through cycles, and we're going around in. You haven't been in the industry as long as me, and you early on you were moaning about, we're still banging up the same things we were 10 years ago. I said, well, welcome to my world. It's 30 years ago that we're still banging on about. So, but we are, and with each iteration, I've talked about what each era has given or taken away each time. We are fine. I think we call it the Catherine wheel of learning. So we're going around, but we're gradually getting closer to what we call our data Nevada, But it's I don't know how big this wheel is, and I don't know how far we got to go still. But as you say, there will be iterations and refinements, and probably that energy thing, something will be solved by this, so they'll make more energy efficient ones. They'll have it running on petrol. Maybe that's more efficient.
Oh,
So so I think yeah, maybe we may come back to that a little bit. But something I did just touch on anyway, I've got it in here, is the indie data conference movement. And I'm not just saying this because I've organised one a little while, but I know you do an online one as well. But I did a post last night which was sort of reflecting on experience of going to these mainstream data conferences, and I think the comment I made was that the knowledge juice isn't worth the sales squeeze. It's there's a lot, there's a they are very much more of a technology beauty pageant, I think I referred to it as, rather than really helping companies, individuals understand how to solve the business problems they have in their organization. So do you? I know you get some a great audience to that. What's your views or experiences of going to the I've seen you obviously at the Snowflake one. I'm sure you've been maybe the other ones as well. What's your view of those compared to some, what we call it, more indie style? So, are you at Day to Day Texas?
I was not. I should have gone. It's not that far, but I did not go. It is a good one.
It's next. It's couple weeks time. So yeah, you still can go. Here you go.
Yeah. I think if I recall, I am busy that week. But overall, if you are thinking of going, I think it's worth going. I think so. I have a small community of consultants that there's a group of them who are going. So if you want to find a group, and if you're a consultant and you're an independent consultant, I can show you a group that's going. No, I think it's always gonna be hard for us to hit the scale of Snowflake or Databricks or an AWS, when like the sheer planning alone would cost probably upwards of $1 million in terms of like man and people hours, and I can't even imagine the rental of the space and all these other things. But like you said, like it can be a little bit more about whatever it is, right? Snowflake. Well, Snowflake conference is going to be about either Snowflake or all of Snowflake's vendors, or use cases from companies that use Snowflake, which again, like, what would you want it to be? It's one big advertisement. That's what its goal is. I think the goal of most of our conferences is to the more indie and smaller ones is to show what people can do more broadly, right? It's like, look, I don't care if it's Databricks or Snowflake or Teradata or whatever. If you're doing something interesting, I want to share it. I want people to know what's actually happening. That's always my goal, is like, I want people to know. I don't want people to like sell you a dream. I want people to say, like, here's what I'm doing, here's the challenges I'm facing, here's how I've solved them. Because that's really I think what people want. That's what they want to learn. They don't just want to see like, okay, here's Snowflake's new thing that could in the future do something, or Databricks' new Databricks Genie. Okay, here's what it could do if it's tuned correctly and the data is perfect and everything works 100% the way it should, because that's not the way the world is. And I want to hear the messy, dirty details of like, how did you make this thing work despite all the problems you probably had to face?
Yeah. I like the art of the possible. Just to show what can be done, but then also the battle scars and challenges you've had on the journey. And if anyone says it all works fine out the box, then they're a salesperson.
Yes. I've heard that too many times. Out of the box, it'll automatically detect your data model. It'll build it for you, and it'll instead of months, it's always the same line, right? Like, instead of months, it'll take minutes or day, and you're like, that's not how this works.
200% efficiency, ROI of X times 7. I've never seen the calculations behind any of these claims. I
think they usually count out or remove any of the like people time. It's like, we already knew the data model, like all the details were already figured out, and it was just like, we just clicked the button, and then like after that it took us 30 minutes to set up. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if that's all, if I had a perfect script from the beginning and knew exactly what to build, sure, it'd be fast, but that's not how it starts.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as you mentioned, is that any of, I suppose, even reinvent and they serve a purpose. I'm not saying, and they're a great networking opportunity, and there is some great merchandise and swag you get there, and there are some great presentations. But I think complementing them with going and seeing something that is a little bit more independent and focused on solving problems, more of a community feel is something that I see people wanting to go to more. I mean, we've mentioned day-to-day Texas. There's Helsinki week seems to be quite successful as well, and there's another the Data Chill Summit. I think the Champion the Iceberg stuff, which it's a nice segue actually into one of the other topics we were going to talk about for 2025. So, is the talk about iceberg just the tip of the iceberg?
Yeah.
So obviously we talked about iceberg, the rise of iceberg. Where do you see the future of how do you see iceberg being used in 2025 for organizations? Do you see people moving to it, people starting to adopt it?
I mean, there are still people who are on SQL Server running under someone's desk somewhere. So, maybe some people, maybe some of them will go directly to Iceberg. I think there's a lot of people who just want something that works, which is not to say that Iceberg doesn't work, but like the only way I can see those companies adopting, something like Iceberg is like if it is just so seamless that it's like it's just creating another table, right? It shouldn't be like, okay, I have to go through I have to go actually figure out how it works. It's like, the example I've given both in my recent newsletter and I think one of their podcasts was, I had a director of engineering that I worked for while I was consulting that told me, I like skiing on the weekends basically. And they're suggesting that I don't want to have to babysit something that was 7 tools put together, right? Especially the first versions of people who were setting up Iceberg and all this stuff. You had to set up Iceberg, you had to do something for security. You had to basically rebuild a database out of these larger components. And some people are I just want all of that together. I don't have to piecemeal something, right? With the extra $5,000 that I'm paying in compute because I can't pick which compute to run is worth it because I don't have to, again, be here on the weekends to babysit it.
So maybe Hortonworks or Cloudera will come back and just have a version that just has the open source Apache Iceberg and Flink and a few other things around it. We're going full circle. It's the next cycle.
I'm sure Databricks is hopefully spending a lot of time learning from Cloudera and kind of what went wrong there. I mean, they're still around, so I guess I can't say there's too much wrong there, but definitely.
Well, if you look at yes, they are around, but I mean they IPO'd and then they got bought back privately. And the delta between what they IPO'd to,
I'm trying to be nice. They're still around. I think there's still a lot of large organizations that have them or slowly have a hard time migrating. I mean, that's
we just one client just about to move across for them because the X amount a month it's costing them. So there is a, but so I mean back to the iceberg. I am a bit worried that we are going down that route of just cobbling together some open source stuff which you don't really have full control over unless you start being the main committer for it, but then you're really just developing it then. Which you saw back
then your $2 billion purchase isn't you wanting to keep it open source, it's wanting to develop for yourself. It's hard. It's one of those things where it's you see that purchase, you see that they want to keep it open source, but it's your business at the end of the day. Now if they remain private, right, if Databricks remains private, they could make an argument to we think it's more, it's better for us to not try to completely box out our competitors. Maybe there's some, there's some benefit. But if they go, if they go, the IPO route, I don't know what their shares. I don't know what their share setup is. If it's set up like Mark, where it's from Facebook, where it doesn't matter. They have voting power. I don't know if it's set up that way or if it's set up more traditionally. If it's set up more traditionally, they're probably going to get pushed.
Tableau did when they sold to Salesforce for a certain amount of years or something that the owners still had all of the development, the rights to decide what happens to it. But
but eventually,
and maybe that's do we think Databricks will IPO this year? It's
I mean, they just got around. I don't know.
$2 billion, over $2 billion or something, wasn't it?
Was it $2 billion? Was it more than that?
Oh, maybe
I
it's
don't
more
remember
than
what
that.
it was. I don't remember.
I know it's in the billions.
I thought it was one of the
anyway.
largest rounds.
Maybe it's $6 billion. Maybe it's $6 billion.
Yeah. I think it's like 10 billion total or something. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's a lot of money. Supposedly that they're making money. At what point do you want to? Maybe you want to, if you're doing well.
Yeah.
I don't know. They probably want it to be a very, like, just a market that's exploding, which, you could argue it is right now, but it probably feels frothy too. I don't, that starts getting into the financialization of things, and then that starts getting a little bit out of my space. So
we don't want to get accused of market manipulation or anything like that.
No,
so
I don't think we're gonna. I don't think we're there.
Oh no, I think I did. I think I did a post a little while ago saying I think Microsoft were going to buy them, which at the time I didn't know, but later on I found out they did try and buy them, but they didn't offer enough. But yeah, I got a lot of Databricks haters. But anyway, whatever's best for the data community is what should happen. I'll say it. We're gonna bring Ramona on in a second, so we're gonna have a gate crasher. She was asking too many questions in there, so I thought I'd just ask her to come on instead. But I think we've got one more I had on here, and it's something I did an article recently with Coalesce, and I called it the platform gravity. And a high level view of that, it's we had data gravity with bringing centralized data to one place and having a compute connecting to that. I see now with multiple vendors now, it's becoming that platform gravity. Run everything here. We'll do your ingest, we'll do your cataloging, we'll do your machine learning, we'll do your containerization. All you can eat. Come here to one location. I suppose there's good and bad for that. I think there's probably another level that you can go with this, is that platform gravity being non-just data specific, it bringing in more operational systems as well or operational functions or capabilities into that single place. So that's something we're going to see more of. That's one of my predictions. What's your views on platform gravity?
Yeah, so I assume you mean like kind of like how Snowflake is making it so like, hey, if you want to ingest data, like we are making it so it's even easier. I do think a lot of these companies are starting to make it like better, right? Like tasks in Snowflake are finally getting a little more like, okay, there's a UI where I can kind of see where things are. And you can see how that in the next little bit could could like replace some of what DBT does. What is it? Databricks just I think released like where you can have it like connected, I think, to GitHub directly or something.
Oh, okay.
With, like SQL or something. And that's like how hard would that be for Snowflake to start setting it up so that tasks?
I think they have. Sorry, you can have Git. You can have GitLabs or Git. One of them it works. It has to be the cloud version. You can have integration there on Snowflake now. They're all.
So then it's like, okay, well, if I can set up dependencies in my tasks and then maybe have a little more freedom, maybe eventually get rid of the weird way I have to actually build these Snowflake stored procedures, which requires me to like quote it around and, make some of that a little smoother, maybe add in a little bit of, a couple other things. And suddenly it's like, okay, I maybe don't need DBT. And I kind of can get rid of some of the Fivetran or estuary or portable steps. Well, they usually focus on the bigger data sources, so I'm sure portable is fine.
The Longhorn ones are fine, but you're right. They have bi-directional Salesforce connectors now, and they'll be adding other ones to that as well. And that was a large part of Fivetran's revenue. A lot of the spend that the biggest clients, it was bringing the Salesforce data, which no longer need to. So okay, well I'm gonna drag Ramona in now. So in a true style of like how I gate crashed on your call with Ben with Joe back in the day. So let's bring Ramona on. Hey Ramona, how are you doing?
Friends, I'm good. You stole my line. I was gonna say I wanted to pull a Chris, and you just said that. So now I have nothing to draw.
Well, as they say, great minds think alike. Anyway, but yeah, you had some questions for Ben on here anyway. So
yes. for folks out there, they may. I had to specify that my question is serious because I can be silly and joke around, but the question was very serious. So Ben, and you may provide the context for the question, but you will get the question.
Okay.
How complex should the system be in a kitchen to be able to realize or come up with the rabbit liver mousse?
Well, when you say how complex, what do you mean? Like, I'm just curious what you mean there.
Okay, the discussion was around the AI systems, right?
Sure.
Building data support and models and all of that. So in that moment, I just, because ever since I heard you mentioning that bit, I wanted to insert it in a conversation. So this is me asking a serious question, but actually, it may sound silly, but really, you were discussing about pharmaceuticals and coming up with new medications. So of course I came up with that question. We can think of models, right? And we can think, we have all the supply in the kitchen and everything, and this is our menu, and what ingredients can be combined with what, etc., etc. But it's still a complex system, as opposed to a human who, okay, I open the fridge, I have these things, boom, I come up with that.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely I'd have to understand more on the LLM side. I mean, I imagine it's going to have to ingest a lot of data to get to that point where I feel like, on the human side, we need less information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, like what you're talking about, I just happened to at one restaurant make a chicken liver mousse. We made a lot of it, and then I went to another one, and I was like, we have tons of rabbit liver that we keep throwing away because no one wants it. Let's try doing the same thing I did somewhere else, right? And so that required very little like similar information, right, to create that connection. So, but on the flip side, right, like an LLM could probably figure out 20 dishes to maybe come up with that could be good, where I'd probably come up with fewer, but maybe more, again, I'd have more experience doing them. So
who will do the taste test though?
That's the other part, right? Yeah. A lot of these LLMs suggest some interesting things sometimes. So
and these LLMs could have food tolerance issues as well. So you'd have to ask them what food they're allowed before you actually trained it on them, because otherwise you got a LLM lawsuit against you. Well, the agents will be suing you.
Yes.
But anyway.
So the whole computation, right? Because you need to keep this updated, right? At any point, you have to know what's available and what's not. So it's a streamline of things. So yeah.
Yeah, just put a camera in front of your all your walk-in fridges, and it'll just track what exists in there and what's maybe going bad, and then you can kind of figure out, okay, what's the special today? Well, we've seen this LLM's seen the fact that fish has not moved for the last 4 days, so that is your special for today.
I have a smart fridge, but I don't use those things. Come on, I open it and I know what's there, and I'm constantly creating stuff. So
if we give them too much control, like after Christmas, they see you've eaten too much, it will stop you opening the fridge door. It'll prevent you. Or maybe it said, you've had too many drinks tonight. That's it. I'm not giving you any more beer. And you go,
well, yeah, especially after I think it's the U.S. Surgeon General wants to put marks on drinks to warn you that I think even like one drink at this point will supposedly cause cancer. So yes, now it'll just be like, nope, no more, closing all of it.
Exactly.
And at the same time, we put that food coloring in food, right? Allure red and tetras something, yes, and then we consume candy and then cancer. But yeah, a beer would cause us more problems. Sure.
So in fact, Val's just talked about M&Ms, but we have these Smarties. I don't know if it's Smarties.
Yeah.
They stopped the blue Smartie for a while because they couldn't have a dye. Then they came back, and then you did some research. Is because it was using beetles for the dye. I'm thinking, I don't know. I think I would find the artificial one thing really. I didn't really want to have beetle juice on my sweets, but yeah. I don't know if that is still the case, Cadbury, so please don't sue me on that one either.
Europe has more restrictive laws actually than North America, so I know they did even these two, the red and the orange coloring, right? The same company uses them in North America, but not in Europe. So
in the UK, there were warnings over Halloween saying, "Warning: imported dangerous sweets are on the market," and it was American sweets. It was because they didn't have the right labels on them or something like that. But I think there's worse that can happen rather than getting a bit of food coloring into that.
So you haven't addressed agents.
Yes. What about agents? Well, I think I saw a funny tweet somewhere that it was clever. They're like, whoever, like, it was like someone counting their money, and it was a picture, and they were like, whoever rebranded bots to agents, because like in that sense, it's like obviously there's a little more complexity there, but like to some extent, some of these things are just things we used to call bots, which we would consider bad, and like no, they're not bots. They're agents. They do things that are helpful for us. It's like, well, okay. And then we're putting in AI agents onto social media, which I feel like Reddit is half. Like every time I go on Reddit, I'm like, I feel like half of this is just Reddit running little agents to keep engagement high already. And then it comes out that Facebook's planning to do something similar. I was like, it just feels like that's all half of this is. It's like,
I've seen it.
Go ahead.
No, I've seen a demo actually. I showed the repost that of an AI company who does their business really, and it demonstrates how you deploy the agent, goes to Reddit and checks what's trending, and then composes that and uses it for marketing. And it's such a terrible use of the technology, right? I mean,
that's where it always goes, right? Like when it comes down to it, and as people that work in data, the thing that I've always found is like, if you want to make money in the data world, work for the sales or marketing team, because they will always have money to spend, right? Like if you go do something good like healthcare or something, as much as insurance does charge, right? Like there's not as much money as there is in sales and marketing. You'll always make money if you never want to get fired from your job as a data person. Always make sure you're working for one of those teams.
But you have to like sell, or all the company has to sell. Otherwise, the first one to go is the sales and marketing team.
Also true. Yes.
Ben, by the way, the question that I asked you last week, that kitchen-related question I asked also Chris about, and we agree that it's a data product seniorship platform, right, Chris?
Yes, the owner of it, yes, yeah. And then actually, I've just seen JT's arrived. Then we said it depends.
Of course, it depends.
So, in fact, you asked a good question that we didn't address. What was the biggest lesson? Well, actually, two good questions that we haven't asked, and we'll probably try to address them before we run out of time. But the first one: what was the biggest lessons of last year? So. Actually, I don't know yet, so I'm going to ask you, Ben. First
actually, that's actually I'm going to write that down. That's a good thing for my articles to write, because I don't think I've done like a lessons learned. I've done like a lot of other things. I think it's not necessarily lessons learned. It's something that I always relearn over and over again. It's just like this is less to do with data and more to do with just whatever you're doing. Focus is always best at a certain point. I think it's kind of natural to at different stages in your life like expand and try to learn a ton of things. And then at a certain point, you're like, okay, I'm doing too much. I'm trying to do too many things, and then readjust. So I think I'm at that point in the funnel where I'm trying to narrow it down again. So that's more personal, but that's whatever you're doing. I think if you want to do it well, you got to eventually narrow down, do less.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm still thinking of my one, so carry on. Don't worry. I don't know what I learned last year. Just to keep going. That was what I learned last year. Don't stop.
Just keep going. Yeah. Just keep swimming. That's always there.
Don't look back. Don't look back.
It's continuous transformation, right? You addressed on this. Like I actually wanted to bring it up when I took my break, right, my career break to raise my daughter, and then I came back. I felt like I'm in a different world, and it took me a while to realize, no, it's the same world. It's just fancy labels.
Yeah. Bots are now agents. It's data models became scheme on read, then it became data models again.
And all these things, right, that you were addressing about what happened last year. all of this, Chris, we are the same age. We've done those things. We built things from scratch. We took care of everything from one end to from beginning to end. We didn't have stitching tools and whatnot, but we had a lot of critical thinking and curiosity, and we had to solve those problems without tools.
Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day,
come on.
We were down data mining, shoving
that was the word,
out.
yes, data mining.
Yeah.
Although if you go into a lot of, I think, master's programs, they still use data mining as the term. So
that was my first entry into AI and ML was data mining when I worked for Cognos. But so what was the other one? He said, what you had two questions. The other one was, what was the biggest surprise? What was the biggest surprise? I tell you what, the biggest surprise was how much Databricks paid for Tabular. That was probably the biggest surprise of the year.
I think everyone's surprised, but it's one of those things, right? Like I think that's how everyone felt about Instagram from Facebook. They're like, there's like, if you go back, people are like, Facebook overpaid for Instagram because at that point they had not been around that long. And that's like Gary Vaynerchuk's claim to fame was like he went on TV and said like, no, they underpaid, they stole it for $1 billion, and then here we are several years later, and like that was an amazing purchase. Whereas in a few years, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a good price, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like, hey, it might have been the right price.
Yeah. I wouldn't have complained if they'd offered me that amount of money to buy something like that.
Okay, I'll take a tenth of that. Exactly. I don't know what for, but I'll take it.
Has anyone here remember this company called Magic Leap?
No.
So yeah,
was that another expensive purchase that went nowhere?
Not expensive. It's still around, but it started like the creator was a visionary, and he came up with the idea of the metaverse, I guess, a decade before Zach, and it was so highly valuated at some point. They never got to the IPO, but right now all the folks there, I think, are contracted to Google to do their AR, because this is a company that they did it. They did AR, the augmented reality, and all of that. So a lot of research on it, a lot of money involved. So then Saudis got involved, and a lot. I know I have some intimate details about the company, but it's just into the same vein, right? There are so many billion-dollar valuated companies that just flopped because
there's probably more that have flopped than it's just those few stick out, right? You're like, but that one, those 10 did well, and then those several hundred did not.
Same like restaurants.
Yeah. Did you hear how Slack came about? So the guy that was the CEO or the founder of Slack, he was actually building a game, and they used Slack. Slack was what they were built to communicate with all the developers, and he was running out of money, and he said, "I'm down to talking to investors, I'm down to my last 6 million." He said, "It's not enough to actually finish the product, but I do have this little tool that we've been using to communicate. Should I release that and see if it goes?" He goes, what you got to lose? Go for it. Fastest growing enterprise software sales ever. Something's happened by mistake. I made loads of mistakes, but none of them made me that much money.
Well, we're still young.
I think you just called out the problem. You got to make more mistakes, and then maybe one of those mistakes could be worth money.
We can try. I think we've gone over time, and we could have carried chatting for ages, but I've actually got some work to do.
Yes, I'm sure you got to get off to it.
So both of you, but Ben, thank you very much for coming on the show again. I know you probably have loads of offers and ask on it, so I appreciate you taking your time to come on here. And Ramona, thank you for gate crashing. It was great to have you to come on and help summarize the world and add a bit of humor as well to it. Which is
thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, so we'll probably call it a wrap. The last thing I'll just end on. I can't remember who's next week, but there is someone next week. But so watch out for that. I will be in day-to-day Texas for the 24th, the Friday, is it 25th? So yeah, anyone going day-to-day Texas, look me up there. And the best winter data conference in the world is happening in Austria. So anyone that wants to come along, I do have some voucher codes I can give out still. They are going quick though, so hook me up if you're listening. I can probably sort that out. Yeah, one not to be missed. So, all right, thank you everyone, and I will speak to you. Well, either see you or connect to you online at some point. Both of you, but and thanks to the audience. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks all. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Ramona.
All right.